watch a clock. I don't even have to watch a clock. I don't even have to watch a clock.
Hello, happy Monday. Thank you so much for listening to the Bold Moves podcast. I hope that you find that this is a really awesome way to start your week. What I do on this podcast is share interviews on Mondays for that exact reason, Monday motivation, of people who have made bold moves, hence the name, outside of their comfort zones, and have success stories to share that have paid off because of those bold moves. Today, I spoke with Karthika Gupta, who has made plenty of bold moves. She quit her full-time job in tech to be a photographer. She started a magazine. She has a podcast as well that connects people to different cultures all around the world. And she has fantastic energy and an amazing story that I hope that you love. So, without further ado, here is my chat with Karthika Gupta. Hello, everyone. Today I'm with Karthika Gupta. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm super excited to have you. So, of course, you know that the show is called Bold Moves, and you wouldn't be on if you hadn't made some yourself. I'm wondering if you can tell me a little bit about you and your story and some of the risks that you've taken along the way.
Sure. Well, I don't know if it's bold or stupid, but I did it.
Sometimes there's
anyway.
a fine line.
Yeah, at that time it seemed like really a great idea, and actually, I should take that back. It has been a great idea. So just to backtrack, I'm Karthika. I am a photographer, a podcaster, a writer, and a lot of other things. But I consider myself a creative entrepreneur. And this was not the path I chose for myself. I actually have an IT background. I'm an immigrant. I was born and raised in India. I moved here when I was 21 for school. So I left everything that I knew, my family, my friends, everything that was familiar, and moved to Midtown, middle of nowhere, small college town in Illinois. I went to Illinois State University, and that was such a big change for me. So that was the start of my, bold moves, right? Because here I was letting go of everything and starting afresh. But I had a wonderful time. I met some amazing people, made some great friends, and sort of moved into corporate. I was in corporate for 15 years. Somewhere along the line, I kind of moved away from IT. I started doing more business. I got another degree. And then, of course, kids came along, and I don't know, it was like a switch sort of went on or off, however you want to look at it in my head. And I decided I wanted to be a photographer, something I had no experience in. I didn't know how to hold a camera correctly, what the buttons were. I was, photographing everything in auto and just saying, hey, this looks great. But I don't know, I just sort of took a leap of faith, and I started reading and learning and experimenting with my own kids. And pretty soon, I would take photographs from my friends, and they would be like, hey, can you come take photographs for this and that? And I was like, wait a minute, I am having a full-time job and I'm doing this on the weekend. I have to sleep. I have to have a life somewhere.
Sure.
So it started becoming a lot more exciting and fun for me than what I was doing during the day. I loved my job. Don't get me wrong. I had a fabulous experience working. I loved that. But this was just kind of, going up and in terms of satisfaction. So I decided to quit cold turkey sometime in 2014.
Okay.
I was doing it part-time anyway. And I just stopped calling myself professional in the corporate sense and started calling myself a photographer. And it's been a very fun, scary, nerve-wracking, but satisfying ride, I have to say. It's been 9 years now. This is, I guess, 2020 will be my 10th year in business. And yeah, I've had my ups and downs, but I'm so glad I did this, because I would have always wondered, what if?
Sure.
What if I had, taken it more seriously? What if I had, taken that first wedding? What if I had taken that first editorial gig? But now I can say I did it. And for me, that really gives me a sense of accomplishment. I mean, there are amazing photographers out there. Don't get me wrong. I don't consider myself anywhere close to them, but I'm just so happy that I listened to that voice in my head and I said, I'm going to do this. Every time an opportunity presented itself, I did it. I said, let's try it.
Yeah.
Let's see where this takes us. And some of them I took 10 steps back, but that's okay. I would have never learned otherwise. So
I love that. So you said small town Illinois and you said ISU. Is that where Bloomington Normal? Is that where that is?
Yes, that is right. Bloomington Normal. Yep.
My sister-in-law went there.
Oh, it's an amazing school. I mean, I loved it. I loved the people. I was coming from Bombay, which is as cosmopolitan as like New York or LA, any of the big cities, right? So I come to Bloomington, Illinois, and I'm walking down the street and people are nice. People are like smiling, they're waving, they're like, hi, how are you doing? And in my head, I'm thinking, I don't know you. Why are you talking to me? Are you going to mug me? I mean, what's going on?
Yeah.
And I still go back. I have family who live there. And so it's just such a treat to always go back and see those places and, say, hey, that's where I went. That's my college. And that's the room that I interned in and all those things. So it's really a lot of fun.
So where are you living now?
I'm in Chicago.
Okay. So, in the city?
No, we are in a suburb. It's about, I would say, about an hour from the city.
Okay.
But we live, as much as I would have liked to live in the city, I don't think I would have had the courage to do that. It's just, having lived in Bombay and kind of been there, done that, I was like, I want to see a slightly different side of life.
Sure. Which suburb are you in?
In Naperville.
Okay. One of my best friends lived in Naperville for many years, so I've been there plenty of times.
It's a beautiful place, and it's expanding so much. I mean, so many people are kind of moving in, and there's a lot of diversity in terms of like the restaurants and things to do. So it's a great mix, and I would say a great place to live.
Yeah, absolutely. So what type of photography are you doing? I know you mentioned editorial. You seem like you got your start maybe with family or portraits. What's your main thing now?
Sure. So I definitely started with families and children. Pretty soon I realized newborn is not for me. I just didn't have patience for it. I mean, I love
get peed on a few times.
All of that was okay. It's just the stress of handling them, and I could never do the pose. That's just not my style.
Sure.
I'm more kind of going with the flow, seeing how life plays out, because that's who I am. I mean, I just I don't have a 5-year plan. I don't have a 10-year plan. I just kind of take it day by day, and so that's sort of my style with photography as well. So the whole newborn pose thing never sort of fit into my gamut. Then I started weddings. I absolutely love weddings.
Okay.
It's very different from Indian weddings, right? I don't do Indian weddings.
Those are like multi-day.
Those
affairs,
are crazy.
Right? Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I had a 5-day wedding, and I wouldn't want to do that to anybody else. But I just love the whole sort of environment, the emotions, and just everything about it. I really do enjoy. And then travel, I do a lot of travel. I've sort of moved a little bit away from weddings and families and now do a lot more sort of travel and storytelling, editorial. So that's sort of my jam now.
I love that. Very cool. All right. So you kind of have two main bold moves, the move to the United States and then quitting your corporate job. I'm curious about the second one. You said you quit cold turkey. Did that mean that you didn't really have a backup plan or a ton of money saved? Or was there strategy, a little more care and planning involved?
Well, the right answer would be I had a strategy.
Okay. Is that
but not real. No,
okay.
Not really. So there was a little bit of some personal stuff happening as well. My mom was actually diagnosed with breast cancer in 2014. And she lived back in India. So I really was very torn in, I wanted to go home. I wanted to be there for her.
Sure.
I said earlier, I have kids. So my kids were a little younger then. So I was kind of figure out how to juggle all these things, right? And so I knew I wanted to quit at some point. I think her, her getting sick was just the impetus for me. I realized, life is too short. I have to do this. Plus, nobody would give me 2 months off.
Right.
That was just not acceptable, right? And people, go take 10, 15 days off, and you don't realize it takes you 3 days just to get to India from here.
Sure. Yeah.
So that was sort of a little bit of a push too. You asked about savings, and yes, I did have some kind of put away while I was doing this part-time.
Sure.
But I was really kind of flying by the seat of my pants in a way. I kind of said, okay, let's do it. Let's see where this takes me in 6-8 months. And that way I can, go be with mom, kind of be the daughter role that I need to fulfill now. And I can always come back. And if it doesn't work out, I'll get a job. So I always kind of felt like that was my backup plan, that the attitude, I think that's very important when you kind of make these bold moves, right? I mean, we can have plan A, plan B, like I said, having it strategic, having it kind of laid out 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. But if you don't have the right mindset to say that I will do what it takes, so whatever life throws my way, I will kind of deal with it when the time comes, it's a moot point. So that was my backup plan. I feel like having that attitude that it's okay. Let's do it. Let's see what happens. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And we'll go back to doing what you have always done.
Yeah. I love that. You're right. Mindset is definitely so important. And that makes so much more sense when you factor in the situation with your mom there, because I was going to say, you said you liked your job. So it's not like you were in a toxic situation where you're like, I just can't do it one more day and you had to leave. So yeah, that makes sense there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was there, for whatever reason, when I was a kid, I always wanted to work for Citibank, a bank. And then as I kind of grew older, Citibank stuck in my head. Yeah. And when I got that job through campus recruiting, I was over the moon. It was like, all my dreams and fantasies had come true. It's really weird. Don't ask me why. But I really loved working for them. I had a fabulous time. I had great coworkers, and I genuinely loved what I did. So it wasn't like, I was, like you said, in a toxic situation. It was just that all these kind of scenarios were placed in front of me, and I had to make a decision on, do I focus on career? Do I focus on passion? Do I focus on my family? Something had to give. I couldn't be in all these places at the same time.
Okay, that makes sense. So among all of the bold moves, and I'm sure whatever happened with your mom was scary. My mom's a breast cancer survivor, and there were plenty of scary moments there. I'm wondering what the scariest thing you have made it through has been so far.
Well, there are lots of things. So my mom actually did make it. I lost my mom in 2016. But, I'm glad it sort of worked out this way, just because it was just a very difficult situation for everyone. I absolutely miss her every day, but I think she's in a better place. So I'll leave that aside. But I think, kind of going there was definitely scary, but coming back was scary as well. Because I came back and now I was home. I didn't have a 9 to 5. I didn't have a schedule that was sort of, forced on me. I had all this time during the day when my kids were away. And so for me, that was really scary. I had all these ideas, right? I mean, we all do. We, as business owners and as entrepreneurs, or even, with families, we have all these grand plans of what we want to do with life. And then when you are faced with the fact that, hey, you can actually make it happen, you're like, oh my God, where do I start? So that was really scary for me, figuring out how I can make the best use of my time. And how I can do it in a way that I'm productive and I make money. So, balancing and juggling those things, it was scary. And then every few years I would kind of come up with an idea. Okay, now I want to do something else related to storytelling, related to photography. but something to kind of expand my experiences. So a couple of years ago, I started a indie publishing, independently published magazine.
Okay.
It was focused on the Indian diaspora. So a lot of stories from the Indian subcontinent. Oh my God, that was really scary because I
Okay.
had no experience in publishing. I had no experience in any sort of layouts and all of those things. But all I had with me was the idea and the confidence that I could tell a story.
Okay.
And, fast forward a couple more years and I was like, now I want to start a podcast.
Okay.
I want to share stories. I want to talk to people just like how you are doing, right?
Yeah.
It's such a wonderful way to connect with people that you otherwise have nothing in common. And that's what I wanted. And again, I was sitting there thinking and kind of ideating. And one fine day, my husband was like, listen, I'm so tired of you talking about it. Either you do it or it's off the table. You cannot even utter the word podcast. So that again was another very scary moment for me, because it's one thing to hide behind a camera, hide behind a computer screen, send off a nicely polished email versus speaking and telling your story, hearing your own voice. I mean, this, you do this as well.
Yeah.
So for me, all these sort of moments that have been a bold move have come with a lot of this scariness or this fear of,
Yeah.
oh my God, what am I doing?
Absolutely. So when you think that first, oh my God, what am I doing? But then you actually do it. How do you push past that fear and that, like, what am I doing feeling?
This is funny. It's for me, I always think that just because of, my experiences with my mom, right? The one thing that always sticks in my head is that life is too short. Um, Tomorrow, nobody will know who I was or what I did. And that's okay. I want to make sure that I have a good time and I do what I set out to do. I hope it doesn't sound as, being boastful or egotistical or any of that sort, because that's not my intention.
Oh, I
My
didn't think
intention
so at
is,
all.
it's just to say that, guys, let's follow our dreams, follow that passion. So what if it fails? It's fine. Kind of don't do stupid things, of course, but some of these things, it's more for us to have that satisfaction that, when we are 70 and we look back, we want to be able to say we had a good life. It was fun. It was exciting. It was challenging. It's just, otherwise everything is so boring. I mean, you won't remember anything.
Yeah, I love that. It does kind of all blend together sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm curious, you're doing so many different things, and I love that because I have never described myself as a creative entrepreneur, but we have a lot in common. And so I'm like, oh, I might use that sometimes.
Yeah, totally.
Where can people see your photography and your magazine or your podcast? Here's your chance to say where you are online and on social media.
Sure. Thank you for that. So my photography is actually based off my name. So it's karthikagupta.com, all across social. And the magazine doesn't exist anymore, but the podcast is called Culturally Ours. So it's, again, a website and a podcast, the same name across all social media platforms. And it's basically a way to share stories, narratives, interviews from people all over the world, in terms of art and culture and travel and food, just so that we can get a sense of, kind of who are these people and,
Sure.
how do they live? And 10 out of 10 times, I realize that we're all the same. We just might, look different. We might speak differently. We might have a different accent, the color of our skin, whatever. But deep down, we're all the same. We have the same goals. We have the same sort of, aspirations. We want the same things in life, right? I mean, I want to have a happy life. I want to have a healthy life.
Sure.
I want my kids to have a, bright future. I mean, who doesn't want that? So
Yeah.
we're all the same. We just let all these outward perceptions and appearances and things kind of get in the way of really connecting with each other deep down.
I love that. Now, you've said that that's kind of a lesson that you've learned from your podcast. I'm wondering if there are any other life lessons you've learned recently that you want to share, or, kind of your message that you haven't gotten out yet so far in this interview, any advice that you'd like to give to anyone listening or watching.
Sure. So there are lots of lots of little nuggets, but perhaps I'll stick to a couple. I love this quote. It's by Ariana Scholendagger, and I'm probably butchering her last name, but it's one of my favorite quotes, and it's actually a motto, or rather a mission, a vision of Culturally Ours. She says, "Don't be like we don't we can never finish a book that has missing pages. So why do we want to write off a person that we've not taken the time to get to know, right?"
Oh, that's beautiful.
So it's just take that time, even if whether it's a 2-minute conversation, whether it's understanding where they are from or who they are, or what their background is. It just completes the picture. And like another one is like, don't judge a book by its cover, right? All of these things basically mean that take the time to make that human connection.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I've really, really learned from this year and a half of Culturally Ours. I have met people all over the world. I've just spoken to them,
Right.
but I feel like I know them because I listen to their voice. I hear their story, right? I mean, I'm hearing those emotions. I'm hearing the language that they're speaking. Yes, it's English, but that doesn't mean that you understand everything, right?
Sure.
So it's just having those interactions really drills down this point that we are put on this earth for a reason, and we want to connect with people. There are 7 billion of us now. We can't humanly do that with everyone, but the people around you, really take the time to understand who they are. It's fascinating when you open yourself up to that. We tend to be guarded. We tend to kind of surround ourselves with people who are very similar to us because maybe we're afraid, or maybe we don't want to make that extra effort. But when you let in that diversity in many different ways, it just makes life so much more beautiful. And it like I said, many ways. I mean, it could even be like ordering a meal at a, say, Ethiopian restaurant, and you get to, you taste the flavors, you kind of learn about the history. So it's just such a fascinating experience.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Ethiopian specifically, and I just remembered the first time my husband and I were in London, and an Ethiopian restaurant was the only place we could actually find, and it was such a different experience because you're eating with your hands, and it's just so different from any other food I've ever had. So I love that example.
It's one of my favorite cuisines, and going back to what I said about us being very similar, like the spices and a lot of the food, like some of the dishes are very similar to like Indian cuisine, because there is a little bit of history from migration and all of that. So understanding that also gives an extra special sort of element to the meal. And you're right, the eating with your hands, the having a common plate, and everybody sort of digging in. I mean, yes, I know, everything people are thinking, oh my God, is it hygienic? I don't care. It's just such an feeling because you're really connecting with the person sitting across from you. You are not on your phone. You are focusing on the interaction. You're focusing on using your hands and your mouth and, the flavors and all of that. So it's one of my favorite cuisines for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, listening to you talk about that, as well as so many of the other things that you've mentioned that you're involved in, you can just hear the passion in your voice. And I love it. It's so energizing, and one of the reasons why I have my podcast. But I'm wondering, among all of those things, if you know what your purpose is, and if so, if you wouldn't mind sharing it. I don't know if there's something that connects it all, or how you feel about that. And I know that for some people that can be a really heavy question, but I'd love to hear your interpretation of an answer.
Sure. Well, I'll try this because I feel like I'm still sort of navigating my way through it.
Absolutely. It can be dynamic too. So
yeah. For me, it really goes back to who I am, where I'm from. Like I said, I'm from India. I lived there for more than half my life, and I live here now. I have kids who were born here. So for me, it was always a struggle trying to figure out, who am I? Where am I from? Where am I living now? How am I going to raise my kids? How are they going to navigate this dichotomy of being Indian and American and everything in between, right? So when I kind of would ask those questions, I would always come up short with examples or with situations where I could relate to. And that was part of my impetus for starting Culturally Ours, because I am from a different culture. My culture is very, very different. Family dynamics are very, very different. Most families, even today in India, live as a joint family.
Right.
So there's the in-laws, there's the uncles and the aunts, and they all live together. And while I would roll my eyes at it thinking, oh my God, how do you survive? There is a lot of beauty in that sort of closeness and that security, right? So I was always sort of, I want to try it, but then, am I really, am I being a modern woman? And, maybe I should, run my own house. So all these questions would always confuse me. And
Sure.
I would, turn around and look at my daughter and my son, and I would say, what am I teaching them? How can I kind of make sure that, at the end of the day, when they grow up, they're equipped with the tools and the techniques to navigate this? Because, they live in a society where people are moving all the time.
Sure.
So for me, that was a question that I really needed to get answered. And I needed to answer it in a way that would feel right for me.
Right.
So as a creative entrepreneur, as a visual storyteller, as somebody who loves to read and write, I needed to do it in a way that felt right for me. So I picked up my camera, I picked up the microphone, I did all of that. So now I feel like that is my purpose. And my purpose is for me, so that I can translate that to my kids. And anybody else along the way is just a bonus.
Love that.
I have had people who have kind of messaged me and said that, hey, I love listening to so and so, and we're so similar.
Right.
And that those three words are exactly what I want to hear. We are so similar, because we truly are. And so that's, for me, that's my purpose. And you're right, it can change, but I think as long as I answer that question of who am I and where am I from and where do I live and how do I navigate life, I feel like I've achieved what I wanted to do.
I love that. That's beautiful. So in your lessons / advice that you shared, you made a couple references to quotes and kind of a cliche about books. And a lot of my listeners are also readers. So I always like to ask my guests for book recommendations to pass on in case someone is thinking they can't get enough of you and want to read what you're reading. So if you have any in any genre, I would love to hear what you recommend reading.
Sure. So I have a few, and I will save my most favorite one for last. Okay. So I obviously love everything by Elizabeth Gilbert. I think she's fabulous. She's got just her stories, her style of writing, the way she connects with her audience. And again, as a storyteller, I'm always looking for tips that I can get. So anything by her is always a hit. I love this book, and I actually have it in front of me. It's called We Crossed a Bridge and It Trembled. It's by Dr. Wendy Perlman, and she was actually a guest on my podcast. I heard her speak at an event, and so I asked her if she could come on the podcast. But basically, this book is all about the Syrian war. So she is a professor at Northwestern of political science.
Okay.
And she has a very different approach to conflict in the Arab world. And her approach is by interviews with people who are experiencing it on the ground. And gosh, I'm getting goosebumps now, but
I can tell.
For me, the book really made everything very human. The conflict, the issues. I mean, there's no right or wrong. Every side has its own sort of reasons and everything of that nature. But just humanizing it made it so relatable, because there are stories of moms whose kids have disappeared. as a mom, you relate to that. There are
Mm-hmm.
stories of entrepreneurs who have had to literally shut everything down in a span of less than a few seconds. So as an entrepreneur, you relate to that. So I think it's just having that human sort of element. You put yourself in those stories and you try to figure out, if I was in that situation, what would I do? And I think that brings about a lot more empathy to the situation. And this can be applied to any situation, right?
Yeah.
This one I haven't started, but my sister gave it to me. It's called All Is Well.
Okay.
It's healing your body with medicine and affirmation. So that's something that I'm kind of very fascinated with, this philosophy of affirmation and putting it out in the universe, and seeing how the universe responds. So I'm very excited to kind of read this.
Yeah.
And my absolute favorite, it's called The Kindness Diaries.
Okay.
It's by Leon Leotestis. It's called The Kindness Diaries, and it's actually I think it was made into a documentary as well.
Okay.
And it's basically this guy who left everything and got himself a yellow motorcycle, whatever you want to call it, and toured the world based purely on the kindness of strangers. So he had no agenda, no money. He just would show up and he would approach people and ask for gas money or for money to buy a meal or a place to stay. And how much we hear in the news of the world being a bad, scary, horrible place to live,
Yeah.
his just is the complete opposite. It makes you believe in people. It makes you believe in the kindness of strangers. And I've had situations where people have really come and helped me out in a pickle. And so I just feel like this is a beautiful, beautiful book. I really recommend people borrow it, buy it, download the audio, whatever it is.
Sure.
But it restores your faith in humanity.
That's what I was thinking as you said it. Yeah.
And for me, it kind of, again, brings my sort of what I'm doing with Culturally Ours into the context, because I, like you, right, we put ourselves out there with our story, hoping that even one person or two people can relate to it, and complete strangers. You don't know the people who are your listeners. And so you kind of trust in humanity. You trust in the people who you have no idea who they are. You trust, you kind of build that trust, right? So for me, this really kind of resonates with everything that I hope to achieve with Culturally Ours and with actually life in general.
I love that. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
So you saved your favorite book recommendation for last, and I always save my favorite podcast question for last. Although sometimes there's follow-up questions, of course, that result from asking this one. But even before I had a podcast, I liked asking. It's a fun question to ask people. So if 8-year-old you could look into a crystal ball and see the journey, moving to the United States, getting a job at Citibank, praise God, and then quitting that job, traveling back to India, all of the journeys that you've been on, and then your foreseeable future. I know you said you don't have a 5-year plan, but you probably have fun plans this weekend or something that you're looking forward to or dreading, who knows. But on a scale of 1 to 11, if little Karthika could look in that crystal ball and see the whole story so far that we know, how excited would little you be to see that journey?
I think she would pass out.
I don't know. I don't think anyone has ever said that, but that's a hilariously awesome answer.
Because it's just so out of this world.
Yeah.
Gosh, I mean, I come from a family that is very kind of conservative. My parents both were educators or, in the education field. My dad was a brilliant mathematician, so education was top priority. My dad, actually nobody in my family is an entrepreneur. So my dad worked for the same company for like 35 years. My mom was a teacher. And so my path at 8 years old was set in whatever you choose to do and be is what you're going to do lifelong.
Okay.
And not in a bad way. I mean, my dad had a fantastic career. My mom had a fantastic career. I loved going to school. I loved education. So all of that stuff was all fit right in.
Right.
So now to see how my life has taken, where my life has taken me, how it has morphed. That's why I said she would pass out, because never in a million years I would have imagined to do all these things. I was not shy, but I was in my own sort of bubble. I had a couple of friends, and that's it. And my family is just the four of us. So I have a sister, and the two of us. So it was just that was my whole nucleus of what I knew and where I was living.
Yeah.
So now to talk to somebody in Japan, to talk to you via Zoom, it just, oh my God, I would have never imagined this. So yeah, I would have. I don't know if I could put a number to passing out.
Yeah, usually I'm kind of militant about getting a number, but I think that you can pretty much guess that it's an 11, or if you break the rules and choose a number higher than 11, that might be a consideration. So your point is very clear. That's so fun.
I think that's the beauty of going with the flow.
Sure.
Look, it's hard. Let's not sugarcoat it. Being an entrepreneur is very, very challenging. I know there's an infographic that talks about, like in the 24-hour period, we go up and we go down, and we go up and we go
roller coaster.
The roller coaster, right? That is how it is. But you've got to laugh at yourself. You've got to say, okay, tomorrow is another day, and things will change. And that's why I'm so interested in this whole manifesting and kind of, the affirmations, because there has to be some truth to it.
Right.
Otherwise it's just, oh my God, I would have never done anything.
Right.
I would have been down that path that was set for me, and I wouldn't be doing all of this. So I think you got to have fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Why else exist and go through the hard times if you can't have fun during the good times, or even during the hard times sometimes?
Yeah, you're right. Even during the hard times, you've got to take a moment to laugh at the stupidity, at the craziness, at the whatever you want to call it, right? That life's throwing at you. And you might not have all the answers. I mean, oh my God, you'll not have all the answers.
I was going to say, if you do, share them.
Yeah, I don't. I'm just, but I guess what I'm trying to say is be open to the possibilities and just go with the flow. If it's meant to be, it'll happen.
Yeah.
No matter what. And if it's not happening, it's not meant to be. Maybe that's the approach to take, so that we're not bitter. We're not kind of holding on to things that don't go our way. I mean, I loved my magazine. I thought it was brilliant, but it didn't work out. And that's okay. At that time, I was mad as hell. I was like throwing things and I was screaming, but it's okay. It just, it opened up possibilities to other things like Culturally Ours, which I'm having so much fun with, things like podcasting that I get to connect with people like you. So I think it's just, kind of look at the positives.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing your little slice of life and your amazing story and wisdom you've learned along the way. I really enjoyed getting to know you in this chat, and I know that the listeners and viewers are going to love it too. I'm, of course, going to make sure all of the links and your book recommendations are in the show notes too, so people may be reaching out, or you may see some new followers or friends online.
Thank you so much, Mandy. And I really appreciate the opportunity. I think, like I said before, we all have fascinating stories, and just being able to share it with even one person, I think it just makes it so much more exciting and fun. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure.
I hope that you loved that conversation as much as I loved having it. My goal with this podcast is that people will listen to others' stories and hear a little bit of themselves in each one. So maybe you heard this and thought, well, if Karthika can do this,
I can follow my dream and insert whatever that dream of yours is. I hope that you subscribe so that you get an automatic download or at least a notification when a new episode comes out, and there's a great one coming out this Friday with a challenge from Karthika, so stay tuned for that. I also hope that you help me with my mission of inspiring as many people as I possibly can by sharing this podcast, because the more people that hear it, the more people will potentially be inspired to go after their dreams, and you never know, that might actually change the world if the right person hears it and just needs that little nudge. So please share on social media, send it to a friend or family member who this specifically applies to, or whatever. I don't even know how many ways you could do it, but I would really appreciate it. Another way that you can help me with that mission is to leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. If I get the Apple algorithm on my side and they think, well, this person left a 5-star review, this must be a great show, I'm going to suggest it to other people who might like it as well, then once again, that's me potentially inspiring somebody with my amazing guest stories to do something really cool in the world, and I would love that. Now, if you are someone who wants to do something really cool in the world and are as passionate about personal development as I am, I actually have an online book club where we share tips with each other and read books monthly and then meet on Zoom via video and chat about the books. This month we are reading a book from a former podcast guest, and it is about confidence. I'm not going to say the name of it because it has potentially naughty language in it, but there is information on that in the show notes, so please make sure you check that out at www.boldmovespodcast.com. I hope you enjoyed this 307th episode and that you will be around for episode 308 and beyond. And as always, be bold and have a sparkly day. Bye-bye.